Georgia stands on the edge of a political crossroads. With the 2026 elections looming, the stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about control of the U.S. Senate and the governor's mansion hanging in the balance. For Republicans, this moment demands unity, clarity, and vision. But instead, the party finds itself rocked by controversy. In the aftermath of a turbulent 2025 state convention, whispers became headlines. One of Georgia's most influential Republican families is under federal scrutiny, accused of orchestrating a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, raising serious questions about financial misconduct and political influence. It's the kind of scandal that shakes institutions to their core. On our last episode, activist Debbie Dooley offered a detailed insider's perspective on the convention, sparking widespread feedback and calls for balance. You asked for it. Today, we answer. At editorialinterchange.net, we don't curate the narratives, we uncover them. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you the facts so you can think for yourself. The mic is open, the other side is ready to speak, and Georgia's political soul is under the spotlight. Let's get into it with our guest, Republican political activist, Kylie Kremer. And Kylie Kremer, it's great to have you. Thanks for coming on such short notice. We've got a lot of things to talk about concerning the Georgia Republican Party.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, hey, for the viewers that aren't familiar with you personally, your family can definitely be considered political insiders. Would you give us a little background information about yourself and your family members who are involved in politics?
Sure. Well, it's really only myself and my mom that are involved in politics. And we both got our start actually at the same time. It was around the 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe when the Tea Party started. My mother is considered one of the founding mothers of the modern day Tea Party. And I was in college and thought, quite frankly, that she was nuts. You know, the media painted her as one of these pitchfork holding nut jobs that they love to get the camera shots of. So I started flying out from college, and from there I started working from Tea Party Express. And then it just, continued. I was a producer for Sean Hannity for many years. And then most recently, or what I feel like my most notable contribution to politics, other than playing in elections and sending some of our biggest fighters to Washington, is after the 2020 election, I was executive director and still am of Women for America First. And we led the Stop the Steal and March for Trump movement following the 2020 election. So we held the 3 massive rallies in Washington, D.C. on November 14th, December 12th, and January 6th at the White House Ellipse with President Trump. And since then, and we also had the March for Trump buses to demand transparency and protect election integrity, going from coast to coast to put pressure on the different legislators before the joint session of Congress. And we were incredibly successful of that. We were not at the Capitol that day. I had the honor of speaking before President Trump that day. And afterwards, we went directly back to our hotels. And we have seen what the media and the federal government has done. They've weaponized against we the people. And I'm still here 4 years later, standing strong and very proud because I did nothing wrong. I held a legally permitted First Amendment rally. And after 2020, it really, when I had to take a step back from national politics that I had worked on, for, I guess, about 10 years at that point, it really made me focus on my home state of Georgia. I was born and raised here. My mom ran for RNC National Committee Woman for the Georgia Republican Party last year in 2024, and she was elected. And I just have been more engaged within the state because I was so alarmed at what I saw following or during the 2020 election. And we haven't really made any significant strides within the election integrity movement here in Georgia. And it's not from lack of trying or people wanting it. It's because it's been shut down straight from the governor's office and then everybody else falling in line. So that is why I'm kind of focused here in Georgia. And, my mom is a national committee woman, but I'm an adult. I'm 35 years old. My birthday was just last week. And I'm independent and outspoken. And that's how she raised me to be. So I'm very proud of that. So anything that I'm saying is definitely not reflective of her comments. But, I'm proud to be her daughter and very proud of how she is doing in her role for the Georgia Republican Party.
Well, I've got to ask you, as a ultra strong Trump supporter, we're 7 months in. what's your take on Donald Trump thus far?
I'm very proud. We knew that Trump was going to hit the ground running, and they had been doing so many things in preparation to make sure that on day one they could, just take off. And they absolutely have done that. And I know that there are some frustrations with different things that are going on, but I think that we have to realize that it's in context of the full federal government. You have Congress that you have to work with, and you have a lot of members there that want to see Trump fail, that are Republicans. It's not just Democrats. And then you've got the whole deep state, and it's not easy for Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. I'm just as frustrated, I think, with the American people as with Pam Bondi, as many people are. But I trust President Trump, and I've never wavered in that, even when I had the full weight of the federal government pressuring me to betray that trust and that faith I have in him, because he loves America first, and America, its people, and so do I. And that's why I am so grateful that we get, a second term of President Trump. And listen, I love JD Vance. I'm so excited about his presidential run in 2028. I think maybe just as much as I am excited about President Trump's, runs.
Well, I've got to ask too, what's your theory on why the voting legislation can't get through the legislature?
Listen, are you talking about here in Georgia or?
Yeah, in Georgia. In
So
Georgia.
in Georgia, I mean, everything is controlled by King Kemp, for lack of a better way to describe it. He has a stronghold on the state because of what he did with his leadership PAC and how he's able to raise unlimited money year round, whereas the state legislators are not able to do so. And it really hamstrings them and forces them to be dependent on his leadership PAC. I don't know about you. Obviously, you live here in Georgia, but have you ever been reached out to by any of your representatives here in the state to donate? Because I never have. And I think that that's very interesting because they don't need us. They don't need the constituents. They don't need the Georgia Republican Party. Kemp made that very clear when he said that he was going to move away from the Republican Party. And it is not until this June, following the convention, that we're going to talk about where he started recognizing and congratulated the chair for winning. But this all comes from Kemp, and what he wants passed is what gets passed. And if you dare buck the system and bring legislation such as election integrity, he will retaliate and make sure that you are no longer a member under the gold dome, or that there are other consequences for other members in your family and whatnot. And it really is terrible. And people think that just because we're a Republican state, like I did, I thought that we were fine. We were Republican led. Things were moving in the right direction. Maybe we weren't always happy, but by and large, a lot better than Democrats. And unfortunately, I think that we've seen in the state of Georgia that there's not a ton of difference between Republicans and Democrats here, and it's gravely disappointing.
Well, Governor Kemp was definitely not at the state party convention this summer. And the convention, unfortunately, was marred by some controversy. We kind of had two factions that arose in the convention, and a battle ensued. Do you want to give us a little overview of what your take on what happened at the state convention?
Well, just in full disclosure, I mean, I ran for assistant secretary. It was not something that I wanted to do or really set out to do. I filed 15 minutes before the deadline. And that was because someone else that was supposed to do it, didn't follow through. And my goal was to not have a rubber stamp in that seat that wasn't even willing to show up to events. And that was who one of my opponents was. I didn't know the other one. So when things got underway, I came to know my opponent, Jaquan Stembridge, and the other woman, she did not even show up to anything. One event she showed up to. But anyways, my whole goal was to defeat her, and I succeeded in that. I actually endorsed Jaquan from the stage because we've just seen how the Republican Party here in the state of Georgia under Josh McCoon's leadership does not have any respect for any of the people across the state. It's really egregious. Also for executive committee members that do not fully have I guess the best way to say it is do not have a great relationship with him because of his perceived personality conflicts or whatnot. And we saw that on full display at the convention. People were not able to get access to the mics. There was a coordinated effort that was led by the Frost family on behalf of Josh McCoon to block people from getting to the mics. And this isn't just speculation. They went on John Frederick's show and boasted about this, about how they're better at politics than we are and whatnot. And I mean, that's absolutely not true. We play by the rules that are set. We don't break break rules were supposed to be Republicans that believe in law and order. So they had this whole display at the convention that was just, I mean, it was egregious. And from, not allowing people to have motions on the floor, from the chair, Mike Crane, that was put in by Josh McCoon, just completely ignoring the audience. And half the time he couldn't even see what was going on in the audience because the lights were off. Personally, they tried to have me arrested backstage. And, I got up on stage and I spoke a little bit about it, but I only had 3 minutes and was honestly a little discombobulated. So I didn't properly articulate what was going on. But I saw what they were doing with the vote that was right before me, which was Susie Voyles and Cindy Ella Nixon, and it was not in the proper alphabetical order. And so they were having a freaking meltdown backstage. And Jacqueline McCoon which is Chairman McCoon's wife, was sprinting backstage to the other side of the stage to the girl at the computer. And they were very upset with me that I would not sit in this chair in the center of the room where I could not see anything. So they had security come. Security told me, sit down in the chair. I politely said, I appreciate you trying to do your job, but you can't force me to sit in a chair. And then the sheriff's department came and police, and they echoed the same thing. You cannot force her to sit in a chair. And part of that was that I wanted my mom to come backstage to witness what I was witnessing. And my mom is a duly elected national committee woman, and they would not allow her to come backstage. And she represents the state of Georgia at the national level at the RNC, and also has a seat on the executive committee here in Georgia. And they would not allow her backstage. And I find that that is very interesting still to this day, that there has been no explanation other than Vicky Consiglio and Josh's wife, Jacqueline, would not allow her back there. And so I saw this happen. It continued throughout the day with many different things that were going on. Katie Frost was chair of the nominating committee. She got up and just completely slandered and said many defamatory things against myself and then against other candidates that were running. It was the same thing that if people want to go to my social media, they can hear my actual nominating committee interview that was the day before that I had to go through the process with, where they not only were just attacking me left and right, but congressional candidate Candace Taylor from District 1 in South Georgia, she was actually advocating for corporal punishment against me, and said that my mom didn't spank me enough as a child. It was so egregious that they still had time for the interview to continue. And one of the committee members, Peter Corman, said, "This is not an inquisition. This can't, this needs to stop." And they abruptly shut the interview down. But it went viral, and people got to see that this is what the bullying tactics that they do behind closed doors. Because prior to that, they had been doing all these bullying things to me, but always kept their hands clean. And it was always Debbie Dooley and Bill Simon that were the attack dogs. So people got to see it firsthand and hear them all in their own words, and were quite shocked. So when that, spilled into the next day from the convention floor, people were outraged, absolutely outraged that they were using those committee positions that were supposed to be neutral to advocate for the chairman and to say egregious and false things about candidates. Look, I think the bottom line of it is this. You can like different candidates, you can support different candidates, but every candidate and the people, there in the delegation deserve the right to be heard, and to have their voice heard, not just that day, but also for the committee members that are elected on the state and executive committee, that they also deserve to have their voices heard because they represent a constituency. And that is not what we see here at the Georgia Republican Party. And that's nothing new. We've seen it over the last 2 years prior with Josh McCoon, and it's just really disheartening, Steve.
Well, I know that two of the members, and we'll just call this of the McCoon contingent, Brandt Frost V and his sister Katie, caught considerable criticism at the state convention. And now they're embroiled in yet another serious controversy, and it's all related to their family-owned First Liberty building and loan. And you want to give us a little bit about what you know about First Liberty building and loan, and how that controversy started, and then we can go into some detail as we go on.
Well, sure. I mean, it's been no secret. I told you a little bit ago that I hadn't really focused on Georgia, my involvement in politics by and large, really until 2024. And I immediately saw the Frost family and their influence and their bullying tactics against people. They did it to my mom. They did it to me, and not just bullying of they want you to sit down and be quiet. I mean, things like Mama Frost, Krista, and the daughter Katie were attacking me physically about my looks, were making egregious comments about the way that I looked, the way that I carried myself. And it just goes to a whole mentality that they are from a mean girl family. And they do this not just to normal, average Republicans across the state of Georgia, but they also do it to politicians. You better fall in line because they control money and access throughout the state. And it wasn't the Josh McCoon slate; it was the Frost slate. They handpicked all of those candidates, and we saw that all on display. And what we're now seeing is that First Liberty Building and Loan has now been charged by the SEC, which is a federal organization or federal entity, that they've come in and they seized First Liberty Building and Loan that was in Noonan, Georgia. I believe it was June 27th. And they came in and they seized the company, froze all the assets, and there are now pending civil charges with them. But with that, the FBI and many other agencies came in, as well as state agencies with Brad Raffensperger's office and whatnot. And what they have been accused of is a $140 million Ponzi scheme through their First Liberty Building and Loan. And, I just said accused of, but really it's not accused because Brandt Frost IV, which is the father, he has entered into a consent order and admitted to all of it. So we're really just watching kind of all of this play out. And the Frost family, it was not just, a family business where just the dad worked at. Brandt Frost V also worked there and was one of the principals and one of the main people that was negotiating deals all across the country, frankly. And then Katie Frost, the daughter, was director of community impact since at least 2022. And we know that she has overseen over 7 figures annually for First Liberty that they've done philanthropic and political donations. And that is her bio that she gave to the Club for Growth that is on their website still to this day. So this really was a family business.
Give you some highlights for the viewers. I've got a copy of the filing from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it lists the defendants as Edward Brandt Frost IV and First Liberty Building and Loan, and then it has some relief defendants: First Liberty Capital Partners, First National Investments, My Health AI Capital, the Legacy Advisory Group, and the Liberty Group. And here's what they're alleging. The SEC alleges that Frost engaged in investment fraud through First Liberty to the detriment of potentially hundreds of investors and other parties. And I'm not reading the whole thing. I'm just going through some of the highlights here for the viewers. The receiver, who was appointed by the SEC, the receiver has already discovered a number of irregularities with loans and is working to understand complicated transactions that were not well documented or tracked properly. The loan files recovered by the receiver are incomplete and not organized in any reliable way. The receiver has not yet located a clear list of borrowers and amounts payable, and certain reports reviewed by the receiver do not appear to be accurate. Now, when we get to Section 4 of the filing from the SEC, we then see the section Donations and Political Contributions. And it states, First Liberty routinely used investor funds to make charitable donations and gifts, as well as campaign contributions to political candidates. The receiver's professionals have already identified a number of contributions to political candidates. First Liberty appears to have directly, indirectly, or through the Frost family made almost 1,000 political donations totaling over $1 million using investor funds. Several campaign contributions have already been returned to the receiver, and the receiver has been contacted by other politicians requesting instructions on how to return such funds. Boy, $1 million. So when we're looking at this, Kylie, it appears they're alleging a Ponzi scheme, just like you said. But when you're talking about that kind of money, it also really looks like an influence peddling situation where they're not just scamming people out of their money for their own personal profit, but they're using those funds as a form of influence peddling. Does that look good to you? Is that a reasonable explanation?
I certainly think it's a reasonable explanation, but no, Steve, it does not look good to me. It looks highly egregious and also criminal. And we expect, from everything that I'm being told, is we expect for indictments to be coming down really any day. But I think the most reasonable thing to expect is after the receiver issues the full report, which last night we got, I think their first round, kind of where they let us know about the 1,000 donations, now totaling over $1 million, which, as the original filing said, nothing about the amount of donations, but it had a rough number of, I think, 570,000. So we've already doubled that. And so once the receiver comes out with the 90-day report and is able to recover as many funds, then I think that we're going to see other state agencies and then the federal government come in. One thing that I want to encourage people, because I've been following this quite closely and reporting about it on X, just in my own personal capacity, is that, when the federal government comes in and they indict someone, they have their case locked up and built. And that's why they have a 98% conviction rate. Whereas when a state agency comes in, typically they come in, they indict, and then they build the case. And then that's where we see a lot of things fall apart. So I don't want people to be discouraged that they think like, oh, there's been no indictments. I'm reading all this stuff. This is a Bernie Madoff 2.0. Why isn't he already locked up in jail? And it's because the federal government is building their case, I believe. So with all of that, I mean, it is incredibly alarming because of what I've also seen with the influence that the Frost family has here in the state of Georgia. We saw it just with the convention, last month. And then also there have been rumblings and proof that has come forward about the chairman prior to the state convention, that there were personal transactions being conducted with Georgia GOP funds for personal trainers, Brooks Brothers, a woman's boutique. I mean, several transactions were several $1,000s. And the way that he decided to handle it, because he refused to communicate with the executive committee about it, the way that he chose to handle it was at the state committee meeting, which was the Friday before the convention, or the Thursday before the convention on June 5th. He announces to everyone there, also did not give anybody on the state committee the opportunity to speak or bring motions or anything. He just railroaded straight through the meeting, which they had not met for over a year. And in that, he said that he was creating a financial oversight committee for the Georgia GOP. With that, he appointed Katie Frost as financial oversight chair. So there are accusations and proof of personal finances for the Georgia Republican Party chairman. And the person that he appoints to oversee this within the last month is a woman that is at the center of a $140 million Ponzi scheme. I mean, it reeks of just corruption. And again, that influence that she believes, and Josh McCoon, I believe that the two of them believe that they were just going to be able to sweep it under the rug and have no real accountability for that either. I think that they have so many politicians, not just here in Georgia, but across the country. The thing that you are reading from the receiver, it also mentions that they've already started court proceedings in 24 federal district courts. I mean, that's almost half the country. So that's pretty alarming if it's in 24 different states. And so we're just going to have to see how it all plays out. But the first thing I think that everybody wants to see is that we want real accountability within the Republican Party, because we are the party of, law and order. And because, this is absolutely against everything that the Republican Party is supposed to stand for. So we did, I'm sure that you have it there, Steve, but we did just get a statement from the Georgia Republican Party chairman after my mom had, been reaching out to him for days, received no response. So she issued her own statement calling on the Frost family's resignations from all leadership roles, and to return all funds received from the Frost family, First Liberty, and any related entities. And that is because, something needs to be done. People are outraged all across the state, and ignoring this and putting your head in the sand does not make it go away. In fact, it's just continuing to get worse.
Let's break some things down. And I will read Josh McCoon's statement at the end of this interview here. There were some people defending the Frost family at first on social media.
Still
They
are.
were, yeah, they were saying that Brandt the fifth and his sister Katie were not involved in any of the criminal activity that was alleged by the SEC. However, in the local Noonan newspaper, investors told the reporters that Brandt the fifth was knowledgeable about all facets of the criminal activity and knew exactly what was going on and handled a lot of the dealings with them. So, you can't help but think that the kids themselves, and when I say kids, that's Brandt the Fourth's children, but they are grown adults. And Katie was the director of community impact. I believe that was her title. She oversaw all these payments. Now, you would have to know that if they're shelling out that kind of money, and $1 million makes you a political powerhouse family in terms of influence in the state of Georgia. So it's pretty, obvious that they had a lot of clout if they're doling out $1 million in funds. But now they're doing this through the bank and through various other entities. You would have to think Katie knew something was going on if they're shelling out $1 million to all of these various candidates and causes, conservative causes. They were also advertising on local radio, conservative radio, national podcast, conservative podcasts, and they were building up a lot of street cred related to the family institution, the business, and their influence that they had. So they were getting a lot of people who were giving money freely because of their initial relationships with these conservative programs. So, the thing that really gets me the most is, they're taking a lot of these conservative families, right? We know they're conservative families. A lot of them said they had watched the conservative radio program or the conservative podcast, and that's what triggered them to donate. So the real black eye and the real painful part of all this is here you are taking from the very constituents that would benefit the most from what their services and these podcasts and the radio programs, and you're exploiting them to create a political influence system. I mean, it just reeks of really, really bad behavior, and you have to wonder, did anybody who received these funds not know about what was going on? Apparently, some of them said they had absolutely no knowledge and they volunteered to give the money back. But do you think any of the politicians knew that there was
Well,
something bad going on?
I mean, listen, we're going to find all of that out through the investigation, obviously. But this is what I will say. I know that politicians are corrupt, but I have a hard time believing that they would be this stupid to get involved and to accept dirty money like this. An example of this that I will give that my mom has spoken about on her X account is a reporter reached out from a 2019 donation that one of the Frost family members had given to a PAC that my mom was affiliated with. And the PAC is no longer functioning. It's, whatever, moved on. This was 2019. But what my mom said was, look, I'll personally refund this $250. I didn't know the Frost family, or she didn't know the Frost family until 2020. She met Brandt 5, and then she did not meet the rest of the Frost family until 2024. But she, said, I'm going to lead by example and I'm going to refund this $250 personally because the PAC no longer is around. And really, Steve, I mean, that's even before they're saying the quote unquote Ponzi scheme came to be. That, they're giving us the dates of 2021 to 2025. But again, it's about leadership and it's about showing to do the right thing. So there are many candidates and politicians that have already gone ahead and refunded the money because it's the right thing to do. So I would like to believe that these people didn't know. Now, there are other people that the Frost family is very close with that I do think were well aware of what was going on, because the math just doesn't math. And when you try and you sit down on paper and look at all of it, it is very transparent that they were doing something that was nefarious. And just from, a 20,000 foot level, I mean, what is this family doing that they are vacationing annually at a $75,000 a month vacation home that is directly across from the Bush family Walker Point estate there in Maine? And then you go and you find out that there is a lot of contributions to the Maine GOP. I mean, that just looks really unfortunate. And I would like to believe that the Maine GOP doesn't know. And, obviously we're going to be finding that out. But it certainly raises a lot of alarm bells that these people who are just from a normal, average family here in Georgia are cosplaying as the Bush family, and driving Range Rovers and Aston Martins and, luxurious everything. And then they put down people who are not of that same caliber. Well, listen, I mean, I live a great life, but I'm certainly no Kardashian, and I'm certainly not in league with a former president and their family. And I'm not ashamed to say that. But I also do not think that I have the right or the clout that this family thinks that they had, and that they were able to peddle over people to make them do what they wanted. And that's the real travesty here, because this is damaging to the entire Republican Party brand. And it's not just isolated to the Frost family. Katie Frost, like we just talked about, is on the Financial Oversight Committee that she was appointed to. She can be removed at the drop of a second by Josh McCoon, because she was not elected to that position. But she was elected to the 3rd District as chair. Krista Frost is on the 3rd District as secretary. Brandt Frost 5 is the Coweta County GOP chairman. And then Krista Frost is again on, I believe she's 2nd vice chair of the Coweta GOP. And so, the kind of through the grapevine thing of what Josh McCoon has been saying is we can't just remove anyone. Well, first of all, that is absolutely false. It is in the Georgia GOP rules that they do have the ability. But also, we could call a state committee meeting and still have the chairman and the executive committee still calling for their resignations. And then the state committee move forward with that process that I believe it takes 32 days to remove someone. But here's something even more egregious, Steve, that I'm not even sure if you're aware about. I haven't had a chance to tweet about it. The 3rd District, people there are not exactly sure who is on the executive committee of the 3rd District. Well, they've reached out to Katie. They've also reached out to Karen Henschel, who is at the Georgia GOP, as well as Josh McCoon and others, and no one will answer them. And the reason that they will not answer them, we believe, is because they do not want people to know who is actually on the state committee, because they've never met, to be able to move forward with proceedings, to be able to remove Katie. And that is just egregious in itself, because this information should be on the website. It was never updated. And people are not aware to even know how to begin that process, because they don't even know who's on the committee. I mean, it really is just laughable. It's egregious all the way around. I think that we're going to see, unfortunately, some of our friends that we like and that we have, upstanding perceptions of or whatnot, that we may find out that they were more involved than just receiving money. But the investigation is going to obviously let that all play out. But you certainly have to wonder why the chairman has been so quiet about this, why he will not let the executive committee act on it. And then beyond any of that, why are these people coming to their defense and rallying behind them? Because I know that I wouldn't, just because someone's my friend, if they're participating in criminal activity, defrauding over 300 Christian conservatives, someone that I identify as, and also that the Republican Party, supports and as part of our constituency, that should throw up big alarm bells for anyone. That power and greed is more important than what Republican values stand for. And I mean, there should be no room for anybody in the party that not only supports that, but also is willing to defend it. So I think that this is going to have, domino effects much bigger than just the Frost family.
There does appear to be a narcissistic twist to all this. The fact that no one in the Frost family holding a position in the Republican Party resigned based on what the SEC is alleging with them.
Well, and let me interrupt you for a second there. I'm sure that you're aware that they did this whole song and dance where Brandt Frost stepped back from the Coweta chair, and the new acting chair stepped forward. His name was Alan Brady. He was the first vice chair. Well, then when we wanted clarification, because they, brought up another speaker, then there was no time to ask questions, ending the meeting. So then when we started applying public pressure and wanted to know what exactly does that mean? Does that mean a full resignation? Does that mean he's just, waiting in the wings, whatnot? Well, it came forward that he refused to resign. he was waiting in the wings, and the executive committee had actually voted the Friday before, so the night before their meeting where this was announced, that they had voted to remove Brandt Frost 5 from all of the Coweta GOP bank accounts. Well, Brandt Frost 5 refused to do that. So he is still the only person that's in charge of the accounts to our knowledge. I mean, we don't really know. And then the treasurer, this woman, I believe her name was Jennifer Webster, she was the treasurer, had been elected, and then she abruptly resigns. And so they appoint, a new acting chair. Well, I certainly don't have any more information than that, other than to say something about that does not sound right. You have a family, at the center of a $140 million Ponzi scheme. They won't let go of the bank accounts, and then the treasurer removes herself. So what did she know, if anything? Was she just trying to protect herself? And if she was just trying to protect herself and didn't know anything, why would she, not warn this new acting treasurer? I mean, the whole thing is just really egregious. So when you're talking about not stepping down, I mean, they did this whole song and dance to try and give that perception when it was frankly not reality. And now he's back chair.
Well, and I think, the influence peddling allegations, if you look, former state legislator Mike Crane, who is also in a leadership position post legislature with the Coweta County Republican Party, he made a run for the U.S. House of Representatives for District 3. And it's been reported, he received over $30,000 from the Frost family. I mean, when you've got people doling out that kind of money to those candidates who are in the Coweta party and in District 3, it becomes pretty easy to see why nobody's really bucking them. They probably paid for, their positions. But, now the saddest part for Crane is the receiver for the SEC is now asking for all the money back. He's going to have to cough up $30,000 somehow.
Absolutely. And, the strange web these people weave, because apparently the Crane family lives across the street from the Frost family, or one of their homes there in Noonan. And with that, they decided that when the former first vice chair, I believe it was first vice chair, second vice chair, Brian Pritchard was removed, they put up Mike Crane to fill that spot. And he never even went to one meeting, never communicated with the executive committee. He was, again, a rubber stamp for the Frost family at the Georgia GOP. And then look how it all turns out. The person that Josh McCoon picks to chair the Georgia Republican Convention here this past June was, again, Mike Crane. And then we find out that there is a large amount of money that was alleged to be transferred during the SEC filings, whatever, to family members. And it is believed that a portion of that went to $500,000 for a new home for Brandt Frost 5 as he's newly married. And then you go look up the records of that, and guess who sold him that home? Mike Crane's wife. I mean, so it's just this strange web that this family is very intertwined here, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Like I said, I would hope that he did not know, but it is certainly a little close for comfort and certainly raises eyebrows. And I hope that the federal investigation and state investigation gets to the bottom of it. And look, I don't feel bad that these people have to return that money. Who I feel bad for is the 300 investors, 300 plus investors, many of whom I've been speaking with all across the country. And they have been, put in horrible situations. Some of them have small children. Others are retired. It just is ridiculous. It's something, I mean, the Frost family preyed upon these people, and they did so under the guise of how devout, Christians and Republicans that they were. And I find that to be extremely egregious, because they used everything that the Republican Party kind of stands for to go after and to build camaraderie and to build a relationship with these people. And that is not okay at all.
Well, Katie Frost has a lot at stake because she is a national televised political pundit. Do you think all of this controversy and all the federal indictments against them, that's going to ruin her political pundit career?
Well, again, Steve, talking about buying influence, Katie Frost pays to be on national TV. They do not ask her. She pays minimum $5,000 a month to bookers to have her name up as a GOP strategist on all the news networks. They're not coming to Katie Frost in Georgia, who has never done anything notable in conservative politics. She may have done a couple of small, local races and whatnot, but she is no GOP strategist. It's laughable to people that actually are. And the reason that she is there is because, again, her family is paying for her to be relevant. I've actually been calling this out for several months now because the GOP has been paying for what looks like, according to FEC reports, there was 1 month where there were three $5,000 charges to a media booking company. And so I have been asking questions. Who are those three people? Can understand the chairman of the organization, but who are the other two? And so I found out that Katie actually does pay, and her mother and her would just attack me that I was so wrong. And I think that the reason that they were attacking me is because in my career, I've never had to once pay for media and have, worked on almost all of them. And I'm grateful, but it's my merits that got me there. It's the work that I've done. It's the things that I was involved in. It was not because I was paying someone to say, hey, look at me, make me relevant. And it really is a disservice to those media companies that have her on and don't appear to have done the proper vetting to make sure that she was qualified to actually be there. But again, I don't think that we're going to be seeing her anytime soon. I know that, these networks, they pay attention to what is going on in the news, and a $140 million Ponzi scheme that her family has now been named in the filings. It is no longer just Brandt Frost 4. The Frost family has been specifically named in these filings in the last ones that we just got. So, if she is innocent, then it's going to have to all play out. Everybody, we believe in America, innocent until proven guilty. But the main thing here is that the father said that they were doing this. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But I don't think we're going to be seeing her on national media anytime. And I certainly don't think that I would be advocating to put her out as the face of anything right now. We need her out of the Georgia Republican Party. And we also need her, just away from politics in Georgia in general leading into 2026.
Well, I was told by a reputable source that the state party executive committee had a meeting recently, and the situation with the Frost family never came up in the executive committee meeting. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know why that is. I wasn't on the executive committee. I've been told things from numerous members and, kind of heard through the grapevine. I think it was honestly, again, deflection and ignoring the elephant in the room, which Josh McCoon has a strong track record of doing. I think not only is it egregious that they did not speak about it, because this is a national crisis, meaning that it's hitting, national airways. This is not specific to Georgia, that it needed to be addressed. And that would have required real leadership from the chairman to address it with the executive committee so that they can all be on the same page, because they're all being put in a really unfortunate situation by the Frost family. And now the chairman is dragging the rest of the executive committee into this by not standing up and protecting the Republican brand. Furthermore, Katie Frost was on that call, which I find to be even more astonishing. No wonder no one brought anything up, because if I were on that committee, I would not, for my own legal liability, would be very concerned if that were brought up, because they all do have a fiduciary responsibility being on the Georgia Republican Party Executive Committee. So I don't know what the game plan is. I know I've spoken to many executive committee members that have been inquiring or reaching out to Josh McCoon, trying to get answers of how they're going to handle it. Not even just to have an open conversation, which of course they want, but just to get any answers. And it has fallen upon deaf ears, and things are very silent until tonight, when we just got the statement from Chairman McCoon.
Well, let me run this by you. There are some party insiders on social media who are theorizing that the brand new non-disclosure agreement that the party said that all candidates had to sign who are running for party office. So if you sign that and you're an executive committee meeting member, you're under that NDA agreement. So some of them are theorizing that the committee members might be staying quiet because they're under a cloud of intimidation because of the harsh penalties in the NDA. And they're afraid, because it was talking about disparaging the party and things of this nature, Well, what if somebody concluded that bringing this episode up with the Frost family and its impact on the Republican Party can somehow be construed as creating a cloud over the party, and then that would cause the NDA to kick in?
So the only two executive committee members, to my knowledge, that have not signed that egregious document are the treasurer, Lori McLean, who refused to sign it this go around, and then my mom, the RNC National Committee woman, who refused to sign it last year, because it really isn't an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It is a non-disparagement agreement. It's a 9-page document that says if you say anything against anybody, against the Georgia Republican Party or any of its agents, then it's a $25,000 fine per occurrence. You have to pay their attorney's fees. They pick the jurisdiction of Fulton County, which we all know how that works out. And it just really is so egregious. So if you have a problem, you can't come forward without feeling that they're going to bring that down on you. And it honestly is up to the discretion of the chair. So yes, I've heard the same, talking to many people all across the state about this NDA agreement. And let me tell you, specifically the first vice chair, Sally Grubbs, was confronted about this in a Signal chat and was told that that's unequivocally untrue. And, I'm just a liar, because that's what they all like to say, that I'm a liar. And sure, make Kylie Kremer the enemy. I'm not the enemy. I don't hold a title in this state. But here's the deal. So Sally, if you're not under this NDA that you can't say anything, why haven't you spoken out? So does that mean that you're not under this NDA? You're free to speak out. No one's told you that you can't, and you're just choosing to, run interference for the Frost family. You're choosing not to come forward and let us know how much the Frost family gave you for your first vice chair run, because there were donations, we believe, from the Frost family, First Liberty, some of its entities, whatever, that went to Sally Grubbs for first vice chair race, and then Josh McCoon for his chair race. And neither of those have to be legally reported because they're internal party races. They don't have to be reported through the FEC or through the state. So it's really interesting. She says she's not under an NDA. She can speak out, but she's not. She won't come forward and say how much money she got and if she's returning the money. I mean, these people are all wrapped up in it. But then again, she could be saying that she's not under this NDA and is just trying to save face. I don't know, but something just does not, it just does not pass the smell test here, Steve. And it's really unfortunate, because Republicans across the state of Georgia deserve to know what's going on with the executive committee. Not everything should be a hush hush or a secret. Many of these things are public disclosures, like talking about the money and the finances. So I don't understand why our treasurer, for example, I reached out to her right before this show to discuss how the Georgia GOP just announced that they're returning $36,000 back to the receiver from the Frost family and First Liberty and its entities. And I asked the treasurer if she was aware, and she had no idea. So you're telling me that they just cut a check for 36,000 whatever dollars, and the Georgia GOP treasurer, who was duly elected not once but twice, people support her. How does she not know about it? What is
Well,
going on in the
all that,
executive committee?
But Kylie, it's all that, and the fact that Katie Frost is in charge of the oversight
Yes.
for the finances.
Yes.
So
how do we?
It's just, did they go through Katie to get that approval? Who did they use if they didn't use the treasurer?
If they didn't use the treasurer, was it Katie Frost, or was it Karen Hinchell, who's the accounting director that's been there for 15 years? There are many issues that people have with her that have been tried to be addressed. She has no formal accounting or training whatsoever to be qualified in that position. And she is the only one, aside from the chairman, who has access to the bank accounts and the credit card statements, whereas the Georgia GOP bylaws state that the treasurer is supposed to be the custodian of the funds and responsible for all deposits, as well as the FEC requires something similar wording to the same thing. And they do not. They now allow her, like a child, to come down once a month to the Georgia GOP office, where she can sit with the accounting director while she breathes down her neck, and to make sure, that she's looking over things. Well, Steve, I don't know about you, but I sure as heck trust Lori McLean, who is, has almost every accounting credential there is a forensic accountant, qualified to do all these things. She actually teaches accounting and whatnot at the college level. I trust her a heck of a lot more than I do any of these other people that are circling in the same orbit of this Ponzi scheme. And I think that most Republicans across the state of Georgia feel that way.
Well, the fact that the party executive committee didn't immediately ask for Katie's resignation as chairman of the oversight committee just sends everybody in the party just going whirling crazy. I mean, it just makes no sense. Why would you not immediately ask her? It was their authority, they had the power. What is it that you wouldn't ask her after you get indicted like this from the federal government not to have her resign?
Well, to be very clear, she hasn't been specifically indicted yet. Her family has been named as being a part of the Ponzi scheme and donating, the over $1 million in donations. But Josh McCoon's a lawyer. He is supposed to be a smart guy, and any lawyer would tell you to get as far away from this situation as possible, and they're not doing so. So what he's basically doing is setting up the Georgia Republican Party to then have federal authorities come in and investigate the Georgia GOP finances. And I think that is maybe needed at this point. It's unfortunate. I don't want to put our party through that, but I think that the damage that is being done, something really needs to go on that restores trust and confidence and credibility.
All right. So, Caleb, we've got the statement that came in just today, July 22nd, 2025, from Chairman Josh McCoon of the Republican Party of Georgia. And I'm going to read this and get your feedback on this. It says a statement from Chairman Josh McCoon in a proactive effort to support the recovery process. Our legal counsel initiated communication with the receiver, who is diligently working to sort through the records related to First Liberty's collapse. The receiver's initiative aims to recover assets and restore the losses suffered by hundreds of investors. Today, just 10 calendar days after the receiver's appointment, the Georgia Republican Party has completed its diligent review of its records dating to 2021, communicated collaboratively with the receiver to determine the maximum amount of contributions to be returned, and has delivered a payment of $36,843.97 to the receiver, Gregory Hayes, representing all contributions received from Brandt Frost IV and his immediate family members from January 1, 2021 to the present. Though this proactive cooperation with the receiver, the Georgia Republican Party has taken a significant step in addressing the unfortunate circumstances surrounding the collapse of First Liberty. While I should say through this proactive cooperation, while we are under no legal obligation to take this action, we voluntarily complied with the receiver's suggestion regarding the time frame and scope of the donations. This decision reflects our commitment to doing what is right for the victims of this unfortunate situation. On behalf of our party, I am profoundly saddened that members of our conservative movement, along with many others, were misled by false promises of safe investments. This has left countless Georgians facing uncertain futures and financial distress. I want to emphasize that the party's action is rooted in compassion and integrity, aimed at supporting the victims and their families. It has not been made at the demand of any level of government or any candidate for office, but rather is the discharge of our moral duty to do our part to assist those who have been affected by this tragedy. The Georgia Republican Party remains dedicated to ensuring that the interests of our constituents are prioritized, and we will continue to vigorously advocate for those who have suffered as a result of these events. But Katie Frost is still in charge of the oversight committee. Kylie, so what do you think of Josh McCoon's statement to the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that he did the right thing and is returning the money. That saves the Georgia Republican Party legal action for when they do the clawbacks that the receiver has been very clear that they will be doing. However, I don't think that the statement goes far enough. I also have an issue that he did not consult with the executive committee, but even more egregiously, that he did not consult with the Republican Party treasurer, who is the custodian or supposed to be the custodian of the funds. And actually, as we're sitting here, there is an account called the Peach Pundit that has been reporting that the Republican Party had set aside funds to make this return of money, that they had set aside in a different account or earmarked it. And I had replied and said, that is not true. I confirmed with the treasurer. Well, the treasurer just went on to this where they had mentioned, well, now there's a statement and they're returning the $36,000. And Lori McLean said, as the treasurer of the Georgia Republicans, I found out the same time that you did. You need to ask Josh McCoon why. I have a very big problem with that, because our treasurer doesn't know. And I mean, that brings a whole slew of issues. And furthermore, again, back to the Frost family still being not only members of the Georgia GOP leadership role from, the state level on down to the county and district level, but also that Katie Frost is still above the Georgia GOP Financial Oversight Committee that oversees all Georgia GOP finances, including donor information. That is not information that I believe that she should have access to. Her family is involved in this scandal. Her brother, Brandt Frost 5, who again has not been specifically named other than to be part of the Frost family, but he was a principal in First Liberty, went and filed with the Secretary of State to create a new LLC called Heartland Capital. That was again another lending company. And the Secretary of State's office is well aware. And I believe that we're going to see some action that I'm not at liberty to say about that just yet, but I believe that we're going to see some action on that. But you're telling me that this family that used Georgia GOP delegate list and different communication things that they took and used in their own personal capacity and with First Liberty, that they now, just again, the crazy spider web. I mean, it's so astonishing even coming out of my mouth that I cannot believe that, especially a lawyer that Josh McCoon is not saying we need to protect Republican donors. We need to protect the Republican Party constituency. And we need to, first and foremost, have 2026 as what we're focused on. And this is doing nothing to help any candidate leading into 2026 or for the PSC races that are coming up, this year. This is a dark cloud over the Republican Party, and it lacks real leadership that the chairman issues a statement but takes no accountability in the role of saying that we are going to not allow this cloud to be over the Republican Party, and we're not going to allow these people to be members of leadership roles. And this is the bottom line of it. If it all shakes out that they had no role, no part in it, then let them run again when their names are completely cleared. I don't think that anybody would have an issue with that. But the problem is that people have, myself including, is how far does this influence go? So let's just say that Brandt Frost 4 takes the fall after admitting to this in this consent order that he entered with the SEC. Does that political influence that they've still given all this money still ring true? And these people that are refusing, like Candace Taylor, to return the $3,500 that she was donated on June 10th, 3 days following the convention, and which I believe was a pay for play. She attacked me sitting between Krista and Katie Frost in the nominating committee. And then she gets this $3,500 payment for her campaign and is refusing to return it back. So you just have to look at it and say that this whole thing is an issue. And if you really are going to be a leader and have the plan and path that Republicans should follow leading into 2026, I mean, you've got to show leadership, and this certainly does not do that. I was disappointed in it, and I also know that members of the executive committee were gravely disappointed that this went out, and they found out on social media, just like the rest of the world and the media. I mean, that's no way to run a political party. And I do, Steve, from working, the past 15 years on a national level, I do have that experience to know that what is happening in the state is not normal. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome, that these people don't understand that there is a different way of doing things because it's all they've ever known. They've only lived in Georgia or only been involved with the Georgia Republican Party. And this is highly abnormal, what is going on in the state. And I have the experience and, ability to recognize that what is happening here is not right. And instead, people like me and then our national committee woman and others that are bravely speaking out about it are being attacked. And I mean, it's egregious. It is absolutely egregious. And I want to add, with those attacks that are being levied against those of us that are speaking out, Bill Simon has been someone that we all know that has the political line, and he actually admitted on Twitter when he was communicating with Gabriel Sterling and the state ethics office, that he needs to write a check to return Frost money. So we're all asking, what did you receive Frost money for? Because it sure looks like it was to attack people in the state, just like Debbie Dooley. And it'll be interesting to see if she has to return any payments there too, if they're going to force a clawback through her finances.
Well, I think the last thing the Georgia Republican Party needs and the national Republican Party needs is a huge scandal going into the 2026 elections. The Democrats probably, no doubt, will exploit this and try to do anything they can. I know the Georgia media is all over it. I'm expecting the national media to start jumping on this. I think the fact that the Frost brother and sister are doubling down on staying in their positions are going to give them all the fodder that they need. Do you think, from your perspective, that the Republican National Committee needs to get involved in this and try to put out the fire?
I certainly do. My mom is a member of the Republican National Committee, but I have voiced my concerns just as I've expressed them on Twitter. I don't know specifically what her conversations are because I'm not privy to that knowledge. But I've been saying for a while that the Republican National Committee needs to intervene what is going on. Over what is going on here in the state with what just happened at the convention. And then we find out what has happened or what happened at the convention was led by the Frost family. And then we find out this whole Ponzi scheme, it certainly raises even more red flags. I know that they kind of look at states as they're sovereign and they typically don't get involved in things. But I think that the potential blowback that this has or it could have on the national party is something that should be very alarming, and we need to get out front of it right away. We need to root out the rot that is going on here in the state of Georgia so that not only can Georgia Republicans elect great people and do so with confidence and have credibility with the voters, but also, I mean, President Trump, we all sent him to Washington D.C. for a second term with a mandate, and he needs these seats in the House and the Senate to continue propelling his agenda forward throughout the rest of his term. So to just be so selfish to think that this doesn't have resounding effects that can potentially tank President Trump's presidency if we were to start losing seats here in Georgia, it really is alarming. And we need this seat. We need Senator Ossoff's seat to be a Republican so that it's more backup and support for the America First agenda, so that he has larger margins there. And I think that it's desperately needed and appropriate for the RNC. So I hope that they will be coming in here and will be acting upon all of this. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see.
Well, Kylie, thanks for taking this interview on short notice. Thank you for offering your opinions on what's going on. We'll look into more of what the SEC is doing in the future, see what the receiver comes up with. Right now the numbers look incredibly large in terms of the amount of the campaign contributions, the amount of the Ponzi scheme money that they're talking about. But this is only what they know about. It could actually be larger than what they know. The receiver has admitted this in the filing, so stay tuned.
Add one more thing about that. What we just saw in the filings was now Brandt Frost 4 is now pleading the fifth. Which goes against what he said in the consent order and said that he was going to fully participate with everything, that the SEC, any accusations or charges that were brought forward, he would not contest or dispute. And now he's pleading the fifth. They don't have the information. The receiver was on a news program where he was literally opening up empty file cabinets at First Liberty saying there are no documents here. So I think that this has a long way to go, and we just need to let the government figure all of that out. But what we need to do as Republicans is to apply pressure to distance ourselves from this family and to make sure that other Republicans here in the state and then across the nation knows that this is not what the Republican Party stands for, and that there is no tolerance for that going forward. And I think that we need to refocus the shift back onto 2026 because the Democrats are using this, and we have no real leverage to say like, oh, we don't tolerate it either, because we certainly are, from the leadership of the Georgia Republican Party. So I hope that this all can kind of move quickly and swiftly, but we know that the wheels of justice don't turn quickly. So I think the best things that people can do, I encourage them to, is to email the executive committee. Also email their district chair, their district executive committees, the state committee. Email everybody that you can, and don't just email once. Send an email every day until you get a response. Speak out on social media. Tag them in all your posts. And if there's anything that I can do to help anybody, feel free to reach out to me on my social media. It's just at Kylie Jane Kremer, which is my name. My DMs are open, and I'm speaking with investors. I'm speaking with people all over, and I just really want these victims to get justice, to have their money returned to them, and that we can all just turn the page and focus moving forward without being under a corrupt regime with the Frost family that has been running things here at the state level.
Well, it certainly isn't over, that's for sure. And we'll look forward to maybe catching up with you as things progress. And we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate it.